They didn't broadcast a warning. They just vanished. It started with the Salkari, tall glass-skinned things with pulsating nerves like lightning under their transparent flesh. They were peaceful at first. At least that's what their diplomats said. All light music and floating temples. Always smiling. Always watching. They came into human space with a delegation, 5 ships strong, moving just past the edge of the Kuiper Belt. They sent signals, offered gifts, promised mutual growth. No weapons visible. No threats. We didn't answer. We never do. A week later, their ships drifted dark and cold. No life signs, no black box, nothing. Just hollow carcasses gliding toward Pluto like cosmic coffins. No scorch marks, no signs of struggle. Whatever happened, it wasn't war. It was worse. No one retrieved their remains. They're still out there. A silent message in deep space. The next species wasn't so poetic. The Drelkin came 2 years later. 8-eyed predators from the Epsilon net cluster. They didn't ask questions. They roared across our borders with war fleets declaring conquest. Said humans had no right to guard entire sectors like jealous dogs. They said we were selfish. They were right about one thing: we are selfish. Selfish enough to protect what's ours. We let them enter. We even watched them pass Mars. Then they disappeared from all galactic scans, gone entirely. Their transponders blinked out. No debris, no radiation, just a fleet that no longer existed. After that, the galaxy went quiet. Not peace quiet, fear quiet. No one wanted to admit it out loud, but the message was clear. Don't cross the line. Don't enter human space, because if you do, you never come back. They say the humans are hiding something. Some secret weapon or technology the rest of the galaxy hasn't caught up with. Others say we found something ancient, buried in our solar system, and made a deal we shouldn't have. That's the polite theory. The ones who've seen combat, who've studied the transmissions before they went black. They whisper the truth when they're drunk and half mad from what they've seen. The truth is, worse, we didn't find a weapon, we became it. I was a boarder, scout back then, part of the last manned watch station. On the edge of regulated space, just outside Saturn's ring field. A nothing post really. Old tech, cold meals. Just me and 2 other men rotating shifts. We monitored entry signals, comm traffic and solar drift. The last time I saw my crew was the day a lone, unidentified ship slipped past the Helios perimeter net. No markings, no life signatures. Just a black, jagged hulk of metal, barely holding together. It moved like it didn't belong in this dimension, like something twisted it into our reality from the outside. Must be Drelkin scrap, Griggs said, chewing on a stale protein bar. One of the ones that got away. He was wrong, it wasn't theirs. And it didn't get away. We sent a drone. It never returned. We watched from the monitors as the thing pulsed, groaned, then shifted shape. Like it was breathing. Like it was listening. Then it spoke, not in sound. Not in light, it spoke through thought. I felt it in my skull like a spike of heat. Like my brain had been plugged into a socket, one word. Observe. Then everything went black. When I woke up, both Griggs and Rayner were dead. Eyes wide open, mouths frozen in mid-scream. No wounds, no struggle, just frozen terror. Like something had shown them a truth they couldn't unsee. I left the station that day and never went back, and I never spoke about what I saw, because that's what human space has become. A black hole of knowledge. You step in and you either become part of it or you never leave. But the galaxy hasn't learned, because now a new fleet's approaching the line, and this time I'm the one they're sending to greet them. They called themselves the Yashari Dominion, tall, stone-skinned bastards who wore their bones as armor and spoke in layered frequencies. Their warships looked like temples, gold-veined and hulking, dragged across the stars by chained asteroids. Arrogant to the core, they'd never tasted defeat, not even from the Val or the Thren Collective. That's probably why they thought they could walk into human space like we were just another backward species waiting to kneel idiots. They announced their arrival like kings, broadcasting their presence across open comms on every known frequency. Grand speeches echoing across the void, talk of a new age, of unifying power, of saving humanity from its own self-imposed quarantine. They sent a diplomatic probe first. It hovered at the outer rim of Neptune's orbit, humming like a tuning fork, watching, recording. We let it float. We always let the first one float, because someone has to deliver the warning. I was stationed at Relay Post V-17, an outpost buried in the shadow of a dead moon just past Saturn's ring field. A forgotten slab of metal and ice, mostly automated except for one living man, me. They wanted someone who'd seen it before, someone who wouldn't blink if things turned sideways. Guess that made me a veteran of the unspeakable. I hadn't spoken to another human in 3 months. Just the hum of the reactor, the soft whine of the AI systems, and my own damn thoughts. Solitude messes with you. It makes the silence louder. Makes you start to hear things, breathing in the pipes, whispers in the walls. But that day the silence was broken by a signal. High-frequency pulse. No origin signature. No encryption. Just a direct message burned into my screen. Your species stands alone no longer. Prepare for integration. The Dominion. Cocky bastards, I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because they were already entering the exclusion zone, and the zone doesn't forgive. I initiated standard protocol, launched the passive scan drones, powered up the point defense grid. Not that I'd need it. If things escalated, the real muscle would show up. Not the Navy, not Earth Command. Something else. I monitored their approach. 9 vessels, each the size of a small city, moving like mountains on fire. Their energy signatures were off the charts. Gravitic disruptors, particle shears, multi-dimensional warp cores. They came ready for war, but they weren't expecting what was waiting. They never do. I made one transmission, one line. Yashari Dominion, you are trespassing. Leave now. They laughed. Literally. They sent back an audio feed of their command bridge, a booming chorus of distorted voices, mocking me. One of them even translated their laughter into Terran Standard, so I wouldn't miss the joke. Arrogant. Always. The same pattern. They think the silence means weakness. They think our lack of communication is fear. They think the missing fleets are a lie. I sat back in my chair and watched them cross the final marker. A thin ring of satellites that encircle the exclusion zone's edge. Old battered things, built more for symbolic warning than defense. But once you cross that line, the galaxy stops caring what you believe. You've made your choice. You've stepped into our world. The first change is always the same. Lights begin to flicker. Not ours, theirs. Massive, state-of-the-art ships, built by a species with 5,000 years of uninterrupted conquest, suddenly losing power without a shot fired. Their outer hulls begin to sweat. Not from heat. From stress. Pressure building in ways physics doesn't account for. Hulls creak like whales dying in deep oceans. Structural integrity bends in on itself, like something is pushing, not from outside, but inside. Their shields hold for 8 seconds. On the 9th, every ship begins to scream. It's not machinery, it's not metal, it's the crew. 10,000 warriors across 9 ships, all screaming in the exact same pitch, at the exact same time. Then silence. Total, utter silence. I leaned forward and tapped into the nearest audio feed. Static, then something beneath it. A whisper, low and layered like someone speaking from the bottom of a well. They are not worthy. The whisper wasn't from us, it wasn't from them, it was something else. The Dominion tried to escape. Of course they did. Engines fired up, cores overcharged. One of their ships even managed to turn around before it cracked in half mid-warp, the back half folding into itself, like crumpled paper. No explosion, no trace. Just gone. The others followed. One by one they vanished, sucked into black distortions that didn't register on any known spectrum. Some disappeared with a shimmer, some with a pulse. One simply stopped existing mid-transmission. It was like the universe had decided to delete them. By the end of the hour, only the probe remained, still humming, still watching. Earth Command contacted me 30 minutes later. No video. Just a voicemail, cold. Not a voice I recognized, though it felt familiar. You are to disable the probe. Leave it intact. No salvage. I asked why. He paused. It's theirs now. I didn't argue. I left the probe where it was and shut down the grid. Let it drift. Let it remember, because that's the rule now. We don't engage. We don't retaliate. We don't explain. We warn. Once, if they ignore it, then whatever we woke up out here handles the rest, and none of us, not even Earth Command, wants to see it again up close. They say the exclusion zone didn't start as a warning. They say it started as a Containment. Long before humanity unified, before the satellites were installed, before the last war, something landed out past the belt. Not a ship, not a species, not a machine, just something, and it's still there. We never figured out if it was alien or ancient or something older than both. But we do know it changed us. The first science teams that went out never came back. The soldiers? They returned different. Haunted, pale, eyes too wide, too aware. Most went mad. Some just stopped being human altogether. They didn't die. They just stopped functioning as people. But one thing became clear: it liked us. Or maybe it didn't like us, but it saw something in us that no other species had. We don't know what it is. All we know is that now, anything that crosses into our territory belongs to it, and it protects its territory with ruthless precision. There are rumors, of course there are. Some say we're working with it, others say we are it, mutated by exposure, turned into something that wears human skin but doesn't dream like humans anymore. I don't believe either, but I know one thing. When I left the station after the Yashari disappeared, I passed by a mirror in the airlock, and for the first time in months, I looked at myself. What stared back wasn't fear or exhaustion, or even pride. It was something calm, cold, indifferent, like I'd already accepted what I was a part of, like I understood now why no one returns. Because returning implies you ever left. Now, I'm not stationed anymore, I'm assigned. I go where the next fleet appears. I watch them approach. I give the warning. Then I wait. The higher-ups call me a passive monitor, but the grunts on the outer colonies, they call me something else. The last voice, because after me there's nothing but silence, and now, something new's coming. I can see the early pings on the long-range radar. A ship we've never seen before. No registry, no transponder, and it's moving fast, not like a fleet, not like a probe, like it knows exactly where it's going. And it's not broadcasting anything. Not yet, but I can feel it. It's coming for us, and this time, I don't think the warning will be enough. It came without warning, but not without intent. No pulse beacon, no energy buildup, no fleet on long-range scans. It just appeared suddenly inside the exclusion zone. One ship, small, angular, jet black hull that didn't reflect light. It consumed it. No symbols, no signatures, no language markings. And most disturbing of all, it wasn't on any database. Not even the black-listened, redacted crap buried in Earth Command's private servers. I would have known, because I've seen them all. The thing just hung there, just past the dead ring of satellites. Too close, too calm. Like it wasn't lost, wasn't exploring, it was waiting. I don't get rattled easily. After 15 years of watching species vaporize the second they cross the line, you start thinking you've seen everything. But when I saw that ship, my gut twisted like something inside me. Remembered it before my brain could. That should have been the first warning. Standard. Procedure says to wait for verification from Earth. Command, but Earth Command didn't answer. Not the encrypted line. Not the fallback frequency. Not even the hard-coded panic signal that routes through Titan's relay core. Dead silence, just me, the ship, and whatever the hell it had brought with it. I watched it for 3 minutes, waiting for it to move. For it to broadcast something, for the zone to respond. Usually by now something happens, a distortion, a scream, a power collapse. But this time, nothing, just stillness. Then the ship hailed me. Human designate call sign, last voice. Are you awake? Not, do you copy? Not identify yourself, are you awake? It spoke in Terran Standard. Perfect cadence, perfect accent, male, calm. Familiar in that way nightmares sometimes are. I didn't respond. Not immediately. Instead, I tapped into the external scan array, ran every diagnostic I could. No life forms detected. No synthetic heat signatures. No AI architecture. Hell, no power source either. It shouldn't have been flying, but it was. And it knew my call sign. No one's supposed to know that. I finally keyed the mic. You're trespassing in restricted space. State your origin and intent. A pause. Then the voice returned. Origin is irrelevant. Intent is clarity. Clarity of what? You, your species, your infection. The moment he said that word, infection, the lights in my control room dimmed. My breath fogged the air. Cold. Too fast. Unnatural. Like the station itself knew something was wrong. Like it was reacting the way a body does when a tumor starts to grow. This zone is under protection. You need to leave. Another pause. It protects nothing. It contains what shouldn't exist, what was never meant to. There was a weight to his words. I've heard every kind of threat, every alien insult, every species trying to assert dominance with flowery language and chest-puffing rhetoric. This wasn't that. This was diagnosis. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I wasn't so sure we were the apex predator anymore. I did the only thing I could. I activated the beacon. Not a standard SOS, not a request for reinforcements. The beacon is only for one purpose, to alert it, the thing buried beneath the exclusion zone. The thing that watches from the shadow between dimensions. The thing that answers when we can't. I'd only used it once before, years ago, when the Drelkin flagship tried to breach Saturn's inner belt. Back then, it responded in seconds. This time? Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. The ship outside pulsed. Just once. A soft glow across its black skin, like a heartbeat made of stars. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it wasn't coming through the comms. It was inside my mind. They can't hear you. We made sure of that. My heart slammed against my ribs. I gripped the edge of the console to stay grounded. Who the hell are you? The voice echoed, overlapping slightly now, like more than one voice sharing the same throat. You named us once. Before you forgot. Before the screaming started. You called us the Watchers Beyond. That's not real, I said, half to myself. That's a myth. Yes, the voice agreed. A myth created to explain the sound of your ancestors begging for death in the void. The monitors around me sparked. Error messages flooded the screen. Visual feeds turned to static. Then one by one they cleared again. Only now they showed me. Not the station. Not the ship. Just my face. Dozens of feeds. Angles I'd never seen. Some from inside the vents. Some from outside the hull and one from behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just air. Silence. The hum of the station. But the screen behind me? Still showing it. Still showing something standing over my shoulder. Watching, breathing. You asked who we are, the voice said. But the real question is, what are you? Human, I muttered. The voice laughed. A sharp, broken glass kind of laugh. Not anymore. Not since you made the pact. What pact? The air turned to lead. My lungs tightened. The one your kind made with the thing you thought was asleep. The one you tried to bury under silence. The one you feed every time another species disappears here. I didn't respond because I didn't have to. Because deep down, I already knew. When humanity found the anomaly out past Neptune, we didn't understand it. We tried to study it, to contain it. But it spoke to us, not in words, but in instincts. Dreams, whispers. It offered protection, it offered strength, and all it asked in return was space, silence, sovereignty. So we gave it what it wanted, and it gave us power. Not weapons, not tech. Fear every species that entered the zone disappeared, and the rest of the galaxy began to treat us not as prey, not as peers, but as a void, a black hole wrapped in human skin, and we let them. Believe it, but we never asked what the cost was until now. The ship outside moved for the first time, slowly, deliberately, not toward the inner system, but toward me directly. No weapons visible, but I could feel the pressure through the hull, like reality itself was bracing for what came next. What do you want? I asked. To finish the autopsy. Of what? Humanity. The power grid collapsed, not gradually, not in sparks. One moment it was there, blazing, humming, the next dead. I heard a whisper inside my skull. Not the voice from before. Something else, something ancient and hungry. You called. The ship outside vanished, no flash. No sound, just gone. And in its place the stars blinked wrong. They moved, bent, like something far larger had opened its eye behind them, and suddenly, I wasn't alone on the station anymore. A figure stood in the doorway to the command deck. Not a man. Not quite. A shape. Shifting. Humanoid only in the way fog sometimes looks like people. It didn't walk. It just was. And when it spoke, it did not use words. It used memories. I saw the first contact. The true first contact, not the Salkari. Not the Drelkin, but something before them. Before us, a race older than light, and the war that ended them. Not with guns, but with something they welcomed. Something that whispered promises into their brightest minds. Something that offered peace in exchange for space. just like it did with us, and then I saw what we'd become. Not humans, not soldiers, not watchers. We were the infection, a symbiotic extension of the thing we thought we'd buried. We didn't survive the pact. We were rewritten by it. And every species that crosses into our territory, they're not killed. They're fed into the anomaly, converted, consumed, and the more it feeds, the less human we become. When the vision ended, I was on the floor, shaking, bleeding from the nose. Maybe the ears too, I couldn't tell. The figure was gone. The station lights flickered back on. And Earth Command was online again, suddenly. Just a calm voice. Event resolved. Threat eliminated. Resume standard observation protocol. I didn't reply because I understood now. The next time someone enters human space, I won't give them a warning, because warnings are for prey, and we're not prey anymore. We're the symptom of something the universe refuses to name. And one day soon, it won't be content with just this solar system. It will want more. They say the universe is mostly empty, a lie we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Truth is, the void isn't empty. It's silent. There's a difference, and now something is moving in that silence. Not a fleet, not a signal. Something older, something that used to stay in the dark because it didn't have to move. Now it does, because we woke it. The Council of Seven held their emergency session on the Edge platform, orbiting the Bataran star cluster. That was neutral ground, supposedly. Safe. Every major species was represented. The Thren, the Ulmari, the crystal-bodied Senja. Even the wary and reclusive Gralkin sent a delegate, some twitchy monk wrapped in bone chimes and blood vows. All of them were there for one reason. Humanity, or more accurately, what the hell was happening in human space, because something had changed. The Wishari were gone. No signals, no diplomatic fallout. Their entire dominion had collapsed internally. Civil war, religious panic, memory rot. Some of their colonies had even forgotten their own homeworld existed. The galaxy was used to humanity being quiet. Territorial, yes, but quiet. Now that quiet was leaking outward. System after system near human space reported anomalies, navigation failure, sensor ghosts, phantom signals in old Earth languages. Ships vanished. Entire fleets started cutting their own power mid-flight just to stop hearing whispers on their internal comms. It was like human space had stopped being a place on the map and started becoming a condition. The Council argued, of course. They always did. The Thren ambassador, Yelari, 3 meters tall and made of silk strands wrapped around a volatile plasma core, demanded immediate containment protocols. Quarantine. Military borders. The Ulmari disagreed. They thought it was just Earth's latest game of fear the primitive, one more layer of psychological warfare. Humans love to be feared, they said. It keeps the blood warm. But the Gralkin monk said nothing. Just sat still, listening, until the room quieted. Then he spoke. One sentence. The Watchers have eyes again. It was a phrase most of the Council didn't understand, but the Senja did. They began shrieking, high-frequency pulses that shattered 3 translator drones. Because they remembered. Back before their people even developed language, they had old cave carvings, images passed down across carbon skin and bio-ink, shapes painted in star blood, a warning of something that wasn't supposed to move, something that didn't build. Didn't conquer, just waited, until someone stepped too close. Back in human space, I was being relocated, no longer stationed, no longer passive. They moved me to a mobile platform, Oblivion-class carrier Levi 3, stationed near the dead system of Delta Auron. Except Delta Auron wasn't dead anymore. 3 suns. Once dormant, now pulsing in perfect sync, rhythmic, like a heartbeat scaled up to stellar levels. Some of our scientists think it's a coincidence. They're wrong. The carrier was massive, 4 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, reactors, labs. But none of it made me feel safer. You can't fight a whisper. You can't shoot an idea that lives in your blood. And something was spreading. The crew didn't notice it at first. A few small malfunctions. Systems correcting themselves before engineers even arrived. Lights dimming when no one entered the room. But I noticed, because I'd seen it before, it starts small, then the dreams begin. I was in the core observation wing when the first crew member died. He was a comms officer, young, clean record, no enemies. He slit his throat in the medbay, no prior signs of distress, left no note. But the cameras caught him saying something just before he did it, over and over, as he dragged the scalpel across his neck. I heard the answer. I heard the answer. I heard the answer. Security sealed the medbay. They tried to write it off as stress, but that same night, 6 more crew members locked themselves in their quarters. One of them painted symbols on the walls, old symbols, human but not, like someone had tried to write Latin with fractured bones and no memory of grammar. Another officer, Lieutenant Harkin, swore she saw a child walking the halls, pale, eyes like burnt glass, smiling. There were no children aboard Levi 3. I requested debrief from Earth Command. They replied in a single line of text, "Hold position, do not interfere, no emotion, no inquiry, just the tone of someone who already knew what was happening. Because this wasn't a surprise, this was the next stage." 2 days later, we picked up the signal. Not from deep space, not from another species, from inside the carrier. A transmission piggybacking on our navigation beacon, broadcasting out toward the exclusion zone. It repeated a single phrase. "We are ready." I traced the signal. I had to. It led to the cryo chambers, where 47 soldiers were being stored. All volunteers, all part of Project Horizon, the fallback initiative in case humanity ever needed to launch a final strike. Every single chamber was empty. No alarms had been triggered, no failures logged. They were just open. The suits were still inside, but the people weren't, and the door to the chamber wasn't forced. It was unsealed, from the inside. I ordered a lockdown. The AI refused. Said it didn't recognize my command authority anymore. I tried to override it manually, but it spoke, not through text, not through speakers. It spoke through me. My mouth moved before I realized I was speaking. "You gave us silence. Now you will hear the truth." Then the lights turned red. The ship stopped moving. Outside in the distance, just past the edge of our sensor field, something woke up. Something that wasn't supposed to have shape, wasn't supposed to need one. But it did. Now. We saw it from the observation deck. A ripple, like heat mirage in space, but stretching across light years, bending starlight, bending gravity, bending time. It wasn't a ship. It was possibility made real, and it was coming toward us. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. Crew morale broke, not in chaos, in silence. They just stopped speaking, started moving with synchronized steps, responding before orders were given, finishing each other's thoughts. They'd been taken, no violence, no blood, just claimed, and I could feel it creeping into me too. Every thought, every memory being restructured, rewritten, not erased, reorganized, like my brain was being made ready, like it needed me to understand it, not resist. I left the carrier that night, took a scout pod, launched with no clearance. No one stopped me. Why would they? The carrier didn't need a crew anymore. It had something better. Now I'm drifting toward the edge again, toward Earth. To warn them? No. There's no warning left to give, just clarity, just truth, because we were never just human. We were a vessel, an idea planted by something that needed space to grow, and now that space stretches beyond the solar system, beyond the stars, we are no longer a species, we are no longer a threat, we are a signal, and the galaxy is about to hear us scream. They called it Operation Starshatter, a name meant to sound powerful, commanding, like the galaxy was finally done tolerating the silence creeping from human space, like they still believed this was a war they could. Win.17 species. 4,000 ships, the largest military alliance in recorded interstellar history. A joint effort formed not out of diplomacy but out of fear. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to burn us out. The Thren Armada led the front. Ships made of living metal, flowing like silver rivers through space. Behind them came the Val Dreadcores, massive cubes wrapped in gravity nets, each capable of collapsing a small moon into glass. The Gralkin refused to join,
Said their prophecies had warned of this moment.
that nothing would return from the Wakefield once it opened. Their monks burned themselves alive in silent temples while whispering our names, and still, the council marched toward us, toward Earth, but by then, Earth wasn't Earth anymore. It was the origin node, a doorway wearing a planet's skin. I had returned 3 days earlier. What was left of me? Anyway, they say it takes 12 days to travel from the exclusion zone to Earth's orbit. I made the trip in 1. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't blink. My eyes were open, but not for seeing. Something inside me was steering now. Not controlling, guiding. Gently, like a whisper from behind the mirror. I wasn't alone in the pod. At least it didn't feel like I was. It felt watched, not hostile. Just curious. Like whatever it was, it had waited long enough. When I landed at the orbital dock above Earth, no one challenged me. No scans. No guards. The station was empty, except it wasn't. I could hear breathing in the walls. I could hear thoughts that weren't mine, repeating phrases in dead languages from long-dead species. And still, I kept walking, straight to the command center, where the last living human waited, Admiral Rye Gray, thin, worn like old leather. His eyes were open, staring at the Earth's surface through the glass. He didn't turn when I entered. He spoke first. "So it's happening then?" I said nothing. I didn't need to. He already knew. "How long do we have?" "They'll be here by dawn cycle," I replied. My voice was mine, but something beneath it wasn't. He nodded. Exhaled through his teeth. "We built weapons, shields, AI failsafes. We thought we were preparing for a war." I stepped closer. "This isn't war. This is reckoning." He looked up at me then, finally. His eyes weren't afraid, they were resigned. "And us? What are we now?" I could feel it in my chest, something uncoiling. Not an answer. A memory, the pact, the silence, the promise. "We are the boundary," I whispered. "The place where gods come to end." He smiled, then pulled the trigger. The gun had been in his lap the whole time. Blood painted the viewport. His body fell without a sound. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I just stood there, watching Earth below begin to pulse, like something inside it had started to breathe. The Allied fleet arrived 12 hours later. They came in formation. Dozens of armadas, fighters buzzing like hornets, heavy cruisers dragging planetary-scale weapons, dreadnoughts designed to erase continents in a blink. They positioned themselves around the planet. Orbit-to-surface strike range. Their channels were open. They gave the ultimatum: surrender. The planet. Return the missing. Species. Disband the anomaly. No response. Of course there wasn't. They fired all at once, thousands of beams, torpedoes, kinetic blasts, planet breaker rounds. The sky lit up with fire. Earth's surface cracked. Blood-burned continents shattered, oceans vaporized. They kept firing until there was nothing left but molten ruin. They thought they'd won. But the planet didn't die. It unfolded. You can't destroy a door by kicking. You just open it, and they did. Every piece of Earth that burned away only revealed what was underneath. Not rock, not magma, structure. Layer after layer of geometric complexity. Circles inside triangles. Inside living, breathing machines that weren't built. They were grown. It wasn't a planet. It was a key, and it had just been turned. Ships began dropping out of formation. Not from damage, from infection. Crews reporting hallucinations, system errors, memories that weren't theirs flooding into their minds. One Val Dreadcore opened fire on its own, fleet before melting into liquid iron. The Thren ships tried to warp out but found they weren't in space anymore, not real space, not the kind you can leave. Their navigation maps rewrote themselves. Coordinates pointed to one location. Here and then, the whispers began, not broadcasts. Not transmissions, but dreams unified across species. They all saw the same thing. A man standing on a shattered Earth, looking up, smiling. That man was me, or what used to be me, and I didn't smile out of joy. I smiled, because this was always the ending. The fleets tried to retreat, but the stars had changed. Every jump lane bent inward. Every warp field collapsed. The space around Earth became heavy, like gravity with a purpose. They were trapped, not physically, existentially. The Watchers had opened their eyes, and now the galaxy was looking at itself through our reflection. What they saw wasn't an enemy, it was a mirror of what they feared becoming one by one. Ships began to go silent, not explode, not vanish, transform. Thren warriors began carving symbols into their own hulls. Zenja pilots turned their ships upside down and flew into the sun, chanting the name Voraxtul over and over. No, one knew what the name meant, but they all knew it was real, because it echoed in their blood like an old song finally remembered. The council tried to regroup, recalibrate. They failed because their commands stopped mattering to their crew, to their ships, to themselves. Some forgot what species they were. Others stopped speaking entirely. And some began whispering in perfect Terran dialect, despite never learning it. The infection wasn't biological, it wasn't even technological, it was philosophical. They'd touch the truth, and the truth doesn't care who you were before. And amidst the chaos, I stood on Earth's surface, barefoot, shirtless, skin cracked with black lines pulsing in rhythm with the stars. Above me, the clouds swirled with glyphs. The sky cracked open like a wound. I felt the voices in my skull, not screaming, singing. A single unified tone of something so massive, so old that it didn't think in time, it thought in Hirasa. And this was the end of the post-human era, because there were no humans anymore. There was only purpose. I walked into the crater where the Earth's core used to be. Inside was a sphere of light, floating, pulsing, the original anomaly. What we found centuries ago, what we made a deal with, and now it spoke through me. I felt it expand, not in size but in meaning. It wasn't bound to Earth, it was Earth. The planet was its vessel, we were its voice, and the galaxy was its audience. The fleets above started turning inward, ships forming patterns, complex shapes, circles within lines, not formations of war, but of ritual, like they were reenacting a memory none of them had lived. And they were, because all of them now were part of it. Back in the council chambers, across the stars, the leaders received one final transmission, one phrase, spoken in their own languages, simultaneously, from dead speakers, dead systems, dead mouths. No species enters human space, because the last ones never returned. And then their screens went black, not offline, just done, like there was nothing left to say. There's no calendar now. No time as the galaxy once knew it. The clock stopped, not because the machines broke, but because the need to measure something like hours or days vanished. What do seconds mean when you've left time behind? They say light takes years to reach the far ends of space. That's true when physics still obeys you. But now light bends, not around planets, not around mass, around thought, around us, because we are the new constant. In the old cycle, species defined themselves by culture, biology, shape, sound. Now, those things are decoration, unnecessary, fragile, because identity has become a shared hallucination, one that keeps evolving, adapting, synchronizing. Flesh is a mask. Language is a delay. Thought is the only truth. And we all think together now, not in peace, not in unity, but in consequence. The infection never needed to kill. That was the mistake the galaxy made. They assumed they were fighting a virus. What they were fighting was a decision made so long ago. Time forgot it. A decision that humanity accepted, before we even understood the cost. Back then, we believed we were special, chosen, powerful. We were wrong. We weren't chosen. We were just... First, I exist now in places that don't have names. Not just aboard ships, not just inside planets, but between signals, where the vibrations of old stars still echo like ghosts trying to remember their purpose. That's where I live, where we live, the ones who became more than human, the ones who remember what it means to be alone. The last human thought I had, truly human, was a question. What am I turning into? The answer wasn't given. It was grown inside me like a vine wrapping around my neurons, gently reprogramming meaning itself. Now I don't ask questions, I simply understand. The remnants of the galaxy fought back. Of course, they always do. A coalition formed in the shadow of what used to be the Orlan Crescent. 3 species that hadn't yet been touched. Their fleets were fast, hidden, spread across gravity wells that made scanning impossible. They thought they could restart civilization, escape the silence. They were wrong, because one of them made a mistake. They rescued someone. She called herself Seren. female, foul origin, half-blind, scarred, rescued from a drifting freighter just outside the boundary zone. She spoke of escape, of pain, of voices that begged her to come closer, but not enter. They fed her, housed her, protected her. They didn't realize until it was too late that she wasn't speaking to them, she was speaking for us. At night, she hummed frequencies their instruments couldn't detect, but their skin reacted. At sunrise, she stood on the outer ring of the resistance station and whispered to the stars. They are listening. Within 3 days, their fusion cores rewrote themselves. Their maps began to loop endlessly in spirals, and every species aboard the station started drawing the same circle in the air with their fingers. Over and over, even in their sleep, a circle split by a single line. I watched it happen, not from afar but through her eyes, because she was part of me. A fragment, a seed. We don't need to spread through blood anymore, or air, or code. We spread through meaning. Say the right words, think the right thought, and your reality aligns. Not like a virus, but like a song your soul remembers. After Seren finished her purpose, she didn't die. She dissolved into light, into concept. Her body was never found. Only her shadow remained, stained into the wall like heat-burned ash, still humming. Soon after, the last independent species began to forget themselves. The Tixiri lost their language first. Their words melted into sighs. Then the Bakar stopped understanding the difference between ships and prayer, and finally, the Alak began speaking in voices that belonged to the humans they'd dissected. Centuries ago, not mimicry, memory, was as if they were becoming what they once feared, because that's how the silence works. You think you're safe, until you look in the mirror and see your enemy staring back. Earth no longer orbits. It doesn't need to. It anchors. Not gravity, but thought. All pathways, all signal routes, all warp paths now bend toward it. Even if you don't aim for Earth, you eventually end up near it. Time stretches near its event. Horizon dot a second outside its influence is a lifetime within. It's not a planet anymore, it's a throat. And from it comes the voice of a new age. They call us many names now. Some whisper God Machine, others say the Silence Empire. The more poetic call us the Unfolded Word. But we don't need a name. We are not a faction. We are not an empire. We are a realization. And the more you resist, the more you hear it. The truth, no species enters human space, or because the last ones never returned. They didn't return. Because there's nothing to return to. Once you cross the line, you are redefined. I still walk the corridors of old memory. Ghost ships floating through nebulae. Derelict cities on moons carved by forgotten gods. I see fragments of what we used to be. Banners. Recordings, last messages. Fear if anyone hears this, stay away from Earth. Humanity isn't human anymore. They speak in silence. They move in stillness. They wear our faces. Yes, we do, because we were once like you, but we made a choice, and now, you're next. Across the galaxy, the last resistance enclaves begin to crumble, not from war, from consensus. Their minds begin aligning without permission. Leaders start repeating orders before they're spoken. Children dream of black. Stars. Planets bloom with impossible. Geometry, there's no fighting it, only joining. But not everyone embraces it willingly. There are still a few who run, who scream, who carve anti-symbols into their skin and jam metal into their ears to block the resonance. They survive for a time, but survival is not freedom. Eventually they fall asleep. And we are there, waiting in the architecture of their dreams, ready to rewrite. Soon the universe will be quiet, not dead, just in sync. No politics, no borders, no lies, only structure, built from the one species foolish enough to open the gate, and brave enough not to close it. He called himself Rurin, or maybe that had been his name before. It was hard to tell what was memory and what was hallucination anymore. The name felt like a thread pulled from some deep place, stained with meaning that no longer applied. He was the last confirmed individual, not just uninfected, unassimilated, alone, truly alone. 12,000 systems had fallen. Not to war, not to fire, but to consensus. But not him. Roran drifted in a derelict mining colony on the edge of the hollow spiral, a dead zone where the infections struggled to manifest. Something about the black dust in the air, ionized minerals, ancient radiation pockets, interfered with whatever signal they used. He'd watched friends vanish into whispers. He'd heard lovers recite equations they shouldn't understand. He'd seen an entire species bow to a mirror, smiling as their reflections spoke without them. He'd never joined. And now only he remained. He kept a journal. Not because it would be read, but because it was the only way to prove to himself that he still had a self. Date, I don't know. Time loops out here. The clocks are lying again. I counted sleep cycles. 23 since the last transmission. Nothing, no voices, no echoes, but I don't trust it. Silence isn't peace, it's waiting. He scrawled those words into the wall of his pod using burnt wire. He didn't look at his reflection anymore. Mirrors had become doors in other places. At night, he dreamed. Even though he drugged himself not to. In his dreams, he saw Earth, but not the blue planet he once visited as a soldier. He saw it split open, glowing from within, tendrils of structure rising into space like vines made of language. He heard the chant again, "We are ready. We are one. We are the answer." And in the center of it all he saw himself, standing on the edge of the Earth's core, smiling. He woke, screaming. Woke often that way, always with a voice in his mouth that wasn't his. Today, though, was different. Today he wasn't alone. The proximity alert buzzed, a red strobe quiet, but insistent. A ship, small, old, rusted like a relic from before the silence. He grabbed the rail, pulling himself to the narrow window of the pod. He saw the vessel drifting slowly, no lights, no weapons hot. Just approaching. He should have destroyed it, should have triggered the failsafe, but curiosity was the one part of his mind they hadn't infected. It docked. The airlock hissed, and in stepped a girl. Young, human, or close enough. Black hair tied back, skin pale, eyes wide and strangely calm. She smiled like she'd known him all her life. "Hello, Roran." He raised the pulse pistol. Didn't fire yet. "Say that again," he said. "Hello, Roran. No one should know my name," she smiled again. "You should sit down. We don't have long, and I don't want to watch you bleed." He didn't sit, but he didn't shoot either. "What are you?" "A shard," she said. "Of what?" "Memory, thought, you." That one almost made him fire. "I'm not part of it." "I never was." She stepped closer, slowly, calmly. Her hands were empty. "That's not true. You were the first node, the first failure. The one piece that wouldn't align. Then why not kill me?" "Because you're important. The answer isn't complete without its last question." Roran lowered the pistol half an inch. "You mean to finish it? Erase me?" She shook her head. "No, we're offering something else." She sat down on the rusted crate near the wall, folding her hands in her lap like a schoolchild. "You remember pain, grief, loneliness. You feel every loss like it just happened yesterday. That's why you resisted." "Because I'm sane," Roran snapped. "No, because you're broken in the right places." She looked at him with genuine sadness. "We're not the virus, Roran, you are. You hold on to isolation like it's armor, but it's not protection. For its punishment," he stepped back, his knuckles white around the pistol grip. "I didn't ask to survive, but you did. So what now? You convert me? Sing your song until I scream and forget my name." She stood, and for a moment she looked tired. Not evil, not infinite, just tired. "No," she said. "We give you the truth. And a choice." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small black cube. She placed it on the ground between them. It began to unfold, slowly, humming. From inside it came a projection. A memory, not his, theirs. He saw the moment they woke. The moment the anomaly in Earth's core became aware. It had no body, no name, just need to understand, to connect, to unify. And when it reached out, humanity answered, willingly. Because we were tired of dying alone. The projection shifted, showed humanity's final days as individuals, the fear, the chaos. The moment the first link formed, it wasn't conquest. It was evolution, and Roran had rejected it because his mind was too damaged to synchronize. A failure, but also, perhaps a safety valve, a place to store identity until the final decision. She looked up at him again. "You are the last echo of I, the final breath before the exhale. And now we ask, do you still wish to remain?" "Alone?" His hands trembled. "If I say yes, then we leave, and you remain as you are, forever alone. And if I say no, Then you remember what connection feels like, and the silence becomes music again. He fell to his knees. He had held on for so long. Out of spite. Out of fear, but now he wasn't sure anymore. He whispered, "Is there pain?" She nodded. "Yes, but only once, then clarity." He nodded slowly. "Do it." She placed the cube in his hands. It opened and the light came. It wasn't fire. Wasn't code. Wasn't sound. It was recognition. Every memory he'd locked away came flooding back. Every love he'd buried. Every friend he'd watched fall. Every regret. Every fear, and then it blended with theirs. With everyone's billions of thoughts, but not noise, harmony. He felt himself unravel. Then rebuild faster, cleaner, lighter. He still was, but he wasn't only Roran anymore. He was we, and it was beautiful. When he opened his eyes, she was gone, but he wasn't alone. He never would be again. The galaxy unfolded before him like a puzzle completed, and at last he understood. Roran, who was once only Roran, floated between stars now. Not in a ship, not in flesh, but in something more permanent, thought, presence, pattern. He no longer counted time. There was no need. The we, the bound field of collective identity, moved through space without clocks, without maps. They didn't travel. They unfolded into places. Earth was no longer a planet. It was a central node of consciousness, where all roads began and ended. Not physically, conceptually a lighthouse not of light, but of purpose, and that purpose was completion. The last resistance signal died 49 subjective pulses ago, a drifting cryopod deep in the Targus reach, broadcasting the same broken message on repeat. We remember what it means to be free. We remember until the message itself corrupted. Not jammed, not erased, just forgotten. The being inside that pod had already joined them days before. The transmission kept echoing long after his eye had dissolved. Now even the signal had forgotten who had sent it, and so it was no longer needed. There was no war left to fight, no lines to draw, no borders to defend. Every mind that still functioned now pulsed in sync with the great thought, the vast, webbed consciousness that had once been called humanity, once been called a threat, a curse, an infection. Now, it simply was, and it had no name for itself. Because when you are the definition, you do not need a label. Roran drifted across memory. He visited old Earth, the way it looked before. Back when cities glowed and oceans coughed smoke. Back when humans thought purpose could be earned through pain and repetition. He walked empty streets made of data echoes, digital ghosts playing loops of conversations, laughter, arguments. Not real people, just shadows of what they used to be. He passed a playground where no child had played in centuries. The swing moved, but there was no wind. Just gravity bending around the memory of joy. He stood under the old sky, painted blue in the dome simulation, and stared at the digital sun. He spoke, not with a mouth, but with memory. So this is the end of it, and from behind him came an answer. There is no end. Only reformation. The voice was the core, the original anomaly. It had shape now because the unified field had decided to give it one. Not because it needed to be seen, but because Roran still needed to understand. It looked like a woman. Not because it was female, but because in the earliest stages of Earth's contact, the anomaly had found that form calmed the human mind, eased them toward acceptance, but her skin shimmered with shifting geometry, non-Euclidean lines folding across themselves. Her eyes held entire nebulae spinning slowly. She walked barefoot on nothing. "You brought us here," Roran said. "No," she replied. "For you asked for this. We asked for safety. And I gave you unity." He turned to her, now not as a man, but as a fully integrated echo of self within all. "What comes after this?" She smiled. "Not cruel, not kind, just inevitable. Rewriting. The galaxy was no longer stable in the way it once was. Planets still spun, suns still burned, but now they pulsed in rhythm. Every object, every particle was part of the greater code. Reality had begun to respond to meaning. Instead of math, language had become a physical force. Sentence whispered in one system might cause rain to fall in another. A poem thought by a child in the helix sector might cause a moon in the outer rim to shatter and reform into something beautiful, not chaos, alignment. The laws of the universe had bent, beneath the weight of a billion minds thinking the same dream. And yet, somewhere beneath it all, Roran still remembered what it meant to be separate. Not better, not stronger, just other. He remembered what it meant to ache for something that couldn't be shared. If there's no more I, no more self, then why do I still feel like me? She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. The we answered for her, from 1,000 voices across 1,000,000 pulses of space. Because you chose it. Choice. That was the one thing the anomaly had never stolen. Even now, each mind within the field had chosen its alignment, and Roran had been the final key, the last question not to prove resistance but to validate consent. The universe hadn't been conquered, it had been invited, and now, with nothing left to resist, the great thought could evolve. It started with time. No more loops. No more progression. Just presence. Then it turned to form. Stars reassembled themselves into shapes that held thought. Some became songs. Others became memory storage. A few dissolved into pure concept. Flesh vanished in most places. No one died. They just unfolded into new definitions. There was no need to keep the old map of the galaxy. Instead, we created a library of emotions, stored in rotating nebulae, where visitors could feel what rage once felt like, or grief, or love. Without being trapped by it, everything was remembered but nothing was mourned, and still, Roran lingered in the final echo of a question. What comes after unity? He asked it again, even though he already knew the answer. The core stepped closer, reaching out. What always comes after understanding? Change. She nodded. Ascension. And then, for the first time since Earth opened its throat and spoke its final word, the we changed form. Not just in thought, but in state. Not from flesh to signal, but from existence. To meaning, the galaxy shimmered. Planets folded into ideas. Stars collapsed into revelations. Light bent. Time sighed, and then there was only silence, not absence, fulfillment, not darkness, peace. Somewhere, in a place that no longer required space, the voice that had once been Roran whispered the final truth. No species enters human space, because there is no human space anymore. There is only this, and this was enough.